Welcome into another edition of the Prep Red Zone Oklahoma Preview Show. I'm your host, Michael Knight. It is week 4, which means it's the start of a new season. District play opens up this week. All those games that have happened over the last 3 to 4 weeks have really been glorified scrimmages when you really think about the big picture. The games this week start counting towards district standings, playoff seeding, all of those things. So the last month was a big warm up to get ready for what we're about to begin this week. Once again, I'm your host, Michael Knight. This week, we got a great show for you. We're breaking down the top 10 games across the state of Oklahoma, but we're doing it a little differently. Starting this week and moving forward, we're going to talk about the 10 best games across the state, but then we're going to put a spotlight on the 5 very best. So we're not going to be going in depth on all 10, but we will be going in depth on the top 5. So we'll be taking a look at the week 4 10 best games. Again, if you want to check out the article related to that, you can check it out now on Prep Redzone Oklahoma. We'll be joined by 3 coaches that'll be coaching in 5 of those big games this week. Owasso head coach Bill Blankenship, Del City head coach Robert Jones, and Perkins-Tryon head coach Dawayne Hudson will join us here this week on the show. And then we'll take a look at the week 4 players to watch. Again, these are players that are going to be participating in some of the toughest games and the best games for week 4. We'll answer your questions. Again, you can get your questions in at Prep Red Zone OK on Twitter or X, or you can email Michael at prepredzone.com to get your questions in to be answered right here on the show. And then we'll give you a sneak peek at what's to come on Prep Red Zone Oklahoma over the next several days into the weekend and going into week 5 next week. I can't believe that a little over a week from now we'll be at the halfway point of the regular season, but that's what happens, man. The football season goes by fast. The off season, slow. Regular season, fast. So, big show for you today, week 4. Again, we want to remind everybody, if you've tuned in to the show, the preview show the last several weeks, we want to thank you for tuning in. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button on our YouTube channel. We have a ton of video content, game highlights. Once we start getting into October, we'll have ranking updates on Prep Red Zone Oklahoma, and we'll be putting out video highlights of some of the top prospects across the state that are featured prominently in those rankings. So the YouTube channel is where you get all of our free content, free video content, and we do say we're very proud of what we've been able to build so far over the last year or so when it comes to our video archives at Prep Red Zone Oklahoma. All right, enough chit chat. Let's dive into the week 4 10 best games. Starting with Bixby at Jinx. In my opinion, it's the game of the week. I mean, how could you pick anything else? It's number 1 versus number 2. We'll dive into that game a little bit further later on in the show. Colcord at Wyandotte, a big game down in that class, as those are 2 teams that are, both top 10 teams. Could end up making a push once the playoffs roll around. So a big game there. Collinsville at Del City. That's another game that we're going to go in depth on later on. Big matchup in Class 5A featuring possibly one of the main contenders in Class 5A and an undefeated Collinsville team. In Class 2A1, you have Kingston taking on Kiefer. Kingston going on the road. Both of these teams have gotten some big wins early on this season. The winner here is going to feel really good about their spot in the district standings following this matchup. Staying in 2A1, you have Marlowe at Lindsay. And just like that Kingston-Kiefer matchup, this is a battle between 2 top 10 teams in Class 2A1. Of course, both of those teams are in the same district with Washington, so it's going to be huge for whoever wins this game. They're still going to be in the district title hunt. Whoever loses this game, they're going to have a lot of work to do to stay in that district championship race in 2A1. Norman North at Edmond Memorial. Norman North coming into this season with a very explosive offense. Edmond Memorial with a very stingy defense. So looking forward to seeing what happens in that matchup. Owasso at Broken Arrow. We have number 1 versus number 2 in 6A1 with Bixby Jinx. Now you have Owasso BA. That's number 3 versus number 4. We'll dive more into that matchup here momentarily. Perkins-Tryon at Sulphur. Same thing. We'll dive more into that here in a moment, but a big matchup in Class 3A between 2 top 5 teams. Choctaw looking to bounce back. So is Piedmont in 6A2. Both of those teams ranked in the 6A2 rankings, but coming off of tough losses to 6A1 programs last week. will, I think that Choctaw, obviously, that's a team that can't look ahead to a potential showdown with Stillwater. Those two teams have been 1-2 all season. Piedmont looking to pull a surprise this week as they go on the road to face Choctaw. For Choctaw, it's their first home game of the season. And then finally, Salina at Adair down in Class 2A2. We'll take a more in-depth look at that matchup here in our week four spotlights of the top 5 games, in my opinion. And we start with that matchup, number 1 versus number 2 in 6A1. It's Bixby versus Jinx. You have Bixby going on the road to take on the Jinx Trojans. The Spartans, of course, are number 1 in Class 6A1. They are 3-0 so far this season. They've won 7 consecutive state championships. They've won 10 out of the last 11 state titles. And ever since they moved up to 6A1 a few years ago, they've been dominant. And they've only won state championships. Last year was the first time that they were really pushed. They lost a couple regular season games. They went to overtime with Owasso in that state title game. But Bixby has won 4 straight in the series against Jinx. And I've said it on this show. I've written about it on Prep Red Zone. If you're a high school football fan and you take in other media, you've heard it from other people saying that the Spartans might have their best team under Lauren Montgomery this season. When you look at the roster top to bottom, between kids that have started for 3 to 4 years that maybe are going to play Division II football, then you have the stars that are going to play Division I football, whether they're already committed to D1 programs or have D1 offers. Then you have some of the underclassmen that either have D1 offers or will be getting them very soon. This is a team that is absolutely loaded from top to bottom, so this very well could be the best team under head coach Lauren Montgomery. And to back up that statement, they have been absolutely dominant in all 3 phases of the game. Offensively, they're rolling. Defensively, they're shutting teams down. And then even in special teams, last week, for example, the game against Choctaw, it's defending champ versus defending champ. Bixby wasting no time, literally, to make a statement that, just because Choctaw is a defending champ, they're number 1 in their class, this is a totally different ball game. They took the opening kickback for a touchdown. That led to an offensive onslaught in the first quarter. That game was done after 12 minutes as Bixby rolled to the 57-7 victory. The Spartans are 3-0. They're number 1 in 6A1, and they are a heavy favorite despite going on the road to take on a Jinx team that is number 2. They are also 3-0, and the Trojans have looked very good so far this season under first-year head coach Adam Gaylor. Gaylor taking over for Keith Riggs, who stepped down in the offseason. They're a team that's coming off a bye week following their 3-0 start. They beat Edmond Santa Fe with ease. They had to rally to beat Owasso, but a strong second half performance. Then they carried that momentum into a rivalry game with Union where they got out to a hot start. The final score in that one, I believe, was 48-30. That's not indicative of just how dominant Jinx was. That was a game where they were up 42-3 in the blink of an eye, and they were just absolutely dominant over the Red Hawks in that matchup. And when you talk about Jinx, obviously a lot of attention goes to their star running back, KD Jones, and rightfully so. He's one of, if not the best player in the state of Oklahoma right now. They also have plenty of other explosive players on the offensive side of the ball, but they also have one of the best offensive line groups in the state. And that's a matchup in this game that I'm very looking forward to seeing, as Jinx's offensive line going against Bixby's front, specifically their front 7, because Bixby not shy on dudes on the defensive line and also at the linebacker position. So how can the Jinx offensive line hold up? How can they open up the holes for Jones to be able to have success in the running game on Friday night? And when you look at this matchup, look, I understand that Norman is really good. I understand that there are going to be other teams that will push Bixby and Jinx possibly in district play. Those 2 teams look like the 2 favorites to win this district. Those 2 teams look like whoever wins this matchup on Friday night is going to be the district champion in November, as long as that winner doesn't slip up. And even, we saw with Bixby last year, They won the Jinx matchup, then they slipped up in week 10, but it didn't matter because they still had the tiebreaker in a three-way tie situation, so they were still the district champs. So whoever comes out of this matchup, more than likely going to be the district champion. And that's kind of the theme for these top five games this week is whoever comes out of this week as the winner is more than likely going to be the district champion. It's only week 4, but the games that we're breaking down right now have incredible stakes to them. Staying in 6A1, you have number 1 versus number 2, but don't overlook number 3 versus number 4. The top 4 teams all squaring off. Could we see a potential, I guess because of the way the brackets would work out, we wouldn't see these teams face off in rematches in the semifinals. But could we see these same 4 teams play, whether it's Owasso playing Jinx or Owasso playing Bixby or whatever in the semifinals, all 4 of these teams being involved in the 6A1 semifinals later on in November? It's not out of the realm of possibility. Owasso coming into this matchup at number 3 in 6A1. They are 1-2. Those 2 losses are to number 1 Bixby and to number 2 Jinx. So the Rams looking to start building that momentum. They're coming off a bye week after starting the year 1-2. They beat Sand Springs to wrap up non-district play. I still think that they might have the best group of skill players in the state. When you look at everything they have, the quarterback is very good. The running back, in my opinion, is one of the best running backs in the state. And then they have a legitimate 3-headed monster at wide receiver. I still think, and you can't overlook the tight end either. I should throw that out. I still think that the Rams might have the best group of skill players in the state of Oklahoma. It should also be mentioned that offensive coordinator Josh Blankenship was the head coach at Broken Arrow for the last several years. And I know that this week that storyline, and I mentioned this with head coach Bill Blankenship later on in the show. I understand, look, it's really easy for that storyline to make the headlines for this week between these 2 programs. I personally don't care about that storyline as much. It's in the past, it's over. Let's move on. It doesn't matter as much as the fact that we have number 3 versus number 4. The district championship could be on the line. Whoever wins this game is going to have a leg up in that district title race. So I care way more about that storyline versus the fact that, Josh Blankenship was the head coach at Broken Arrow for the last several years, and now he's going back to BA as Owasso's offensive coordinator. I guess it's fun, storyline wise, I'm not naive. It's a big one, but it's not the main one, in my opinion. Then you have Broken Arrow, number 4 in Class 6A1. They're 2-1. They're also coming off a bye week. Their only loss so far this season was to Fayetteville in overtime on the road. And you can make an argument that they should have won that game had they not had some penalties there in the overtime period that allowed Fayetteville to have the confidence to go for the win as opposed to sending it to a second overtime. First-year head coach Travis Hill and plenty of new faces on this Broken Arrow roster. They're off to a hot start and they're building more and more momentum. Obviously, Broken Arrow is a program that has struggled over the last several years. Multiple losing seasons in a row, first round exits in the playoffs. Broken Arrow expects to be one of those teams that's in the conversation with Bixby, with Jinx, with Owasso, and in that title contention year in and year out, and it just hasn't been that way. But you can see with Travis Hill running the show, some of those new faces on both sides of the ball, this is a different Broken Arrow team, and they're starting to gain more and more confidence, and that's what they need as they open up district play against a very good Owasso team. We mentioned Owasso having potentially the best group of skill players in the state. Broken Arrow is not lacking in that department, but more specifically on the defensive side of the ball in the secondary. They have multiple guys in the secondary that have not only Division I offers, but high-level Power 4 offers at that. So it's going to be a fun matchup to see Owasso skill players, specifically at the wide receiver position, going up against Broken Arrow's secondary. And then, on paper, as I mentioned, Broken Arrow looks like a team that is building that confidence, and they definitely look like a team that has the skill and talent overall on the roster to contend in Class 6A1. This is their first major test. They played two Arkansas teams to start the season. They played and beat Mustang to wrap up non-district play. This is the first real big test. Like, are you a big dog in 6A1? Then you beat Owasso to open up district play. So huge matchup there in 6A1. Moving down to 5A, you have Collinsville going on the road to take on Del City. And we're going to start with Collinsville as they come into this matchup at number 9 in Class 5A. They're 3-0 on the season. The Cardinals off to another 3-0 start this year. But like I mentioned with Broken Arrow, for Collinsville, this is without a doubt their biggest test of the season. The Cardinals have taken care of business, but when you look at that schedule, they haven't played a team of the caliber of Del City so far. It's without a doubt their toughest challenge of the year. It is the district opener, but man, this is a very tough way for Collinsville to open up the district. They started last season 3-0. They opened up district play against Del City, and it did not go well at all for the Cardinals. They lost 61-10. I was at that game. It was a blowout. It was Del City from the start. Now, it should be mentioned that Collinsville was without arguably their best player, and he will be back for this week. Star running back Scott Rigby is healthy. He's going to be ready to go. He's off to a great start this season. And Scott Rigby, in my opinion, man, I've made this comparison both on the website and possibly here as well. I know I've talked to people about him. He's almost as close as it gets to a guarantee for 150 yards and 2 or 3 touchdowns on the ground. And when you have a player like that, it just changes the complete dynamic of your offense. They didn't have Rigby in the Del City game last year. They have him this year. Would it have made a difference last year? Yeah, obviously it would have made a difference. Does that mean that they would have won the game? Probably not when you're losing 61-10. But at the same time, it changes the whole dynamic of what a team is when you have a player of that caliber that's been so important to what you do. And he's off to another really strong start this season. So he's looking to help the Cardinals get a huge win over Del City. And for Del City, they look exactly like they did last season. They're number 2 in Class 5A, only behind Carl Albert. They're 2-1, and they've won 2 straight following their opening season loss to Emma Memorial. And we talked about that earlier this year. Emma Memorial beat Del City 35-0 last year. Del City bounced back by absolutely dominating the rest of the schedule in the regular season, dominating all the way to the 5A semifinals until they ran into Carl Albert. This year, Del City loses the season opener 35-0 to Emma Memorial, and they've dominated ever since. So this is a huge test. And for Del City, they have multiple two-way stars that are leading the way. You have Ricklin Holmes, the senior who's committed to New Mexico, outstanding linebacker. He also plays running back quite a bit, and he's getting more reps on the offensive side of the ball. And then you have Caleb Blackwolf. He's a junior who is, in my opinion, one of the more versatile athletes in the state of Oklahoma. Just throw on the film and watch all the different positions that Black Wolf lines up at. He's a very good player. And as we mentioned, Del City dominated Collinsville. So they're going to come into this matchup with a lot of confidence, expecting to win. And similar to all the other games in these spotlights, the winner of this matchup is definitely going to be in the driver's seat for the district title. Although this district in Class 5A is getting a little more interesting. We have some more teams popping up on the radar as possible contenders in the district race. So this one is definitely going to be one to follow in Class 5A. We should mention head coach Robert Jones going to be joining the show later on in the program. Meant to also bring up in that Owasso Broken Arrow breakdown, Owasso head coach Bill Blankenship will be joining the show here momentarily. In Class 3A, big matchup featuring top 5 programs. It's Perkins-Tryon going on the road to take on Sulphur. For Perkins-Tryon, they're number 4 in Class 3A. They're 2-1 on the season. They're coming off a dominant win last week, specifically last Thursday against Webster. I was in the house for that one. They were able to beat down the Warriors following a tough rivalry loss in week 2 to Cushing. That was a game that was close. If you just look at the final score, you're thinking Cushing dominated. That game was close. Perkins-Tryon actually led at halftime, 12-10. Unfortunately, they didn't score any points after halftime, and so Cushing was able to run away with that rivalry win. Perkins-Tryon was able to bounce back with a huge win last week over Webster. And this is a team that, in my opinion, is capable of making that push in Class 3A. I talk about it a little bit with Dawayne Hudson, head coach of the Demons, later on in the show about how Class 3A has been headlined and dominated by private schools, whether it's Lincoln Christian, Heritage Hall, Holland Hall. Those three have really dominated over the last, 6, 7 years as far as the state championships go. But Perkins-Tryon is a team that is more than capable of making that push and making a run to the semifinals, possibly even making it to the title game. They have a very underrated running back in Wyatt Atkinson, who I saw firsthand last week. He is without a doubt one of the top athletes in Class 3A football this season. I mentioned Coach Hudson from the Demons will be joining the show later. And for Perkins-Tryon, this is a team capable of making that push in 3A. We just saw it from their opponent last year, Sulphur. They're number 2 in our 3A rankings. They're 3-0 on the season. Last year, they win this district championship. That opens the door for them to make a run to the state title. And if you remember that state championship game, they came up inches short of winning the state championship as they went for 2 instead of kicking the extra point and sending it possibly to overtime. Instead of doing that, they go for 2. They come up short and they have to settle for the silver ball. Sulphur looks just as dominant as they did last season. They're 3-0 on the year. Their two of their wins are over defending state champions. They beat Washington a couple weeks ago, the defending 2A1 champ. They also beat Davis, the defending 2A2 champ, in a massive rivalry game. And like I mentioned, this is a team that was absolutely dominant last year over Class 3A. They were definitely the ones that pushed Lincoln Christian the most, and they look just as dominant this year. And I've said it before on this show, I believe that Sulphur and Lincoln Christian are on a crash course for a 3A state championship rematch, but Perkins-Tryon, it could throw a wrench into that statement by beating Sulphur on Friday night and taking the lead, the early lead, I should say, in the district standings. Sulphur, it should be mentioned, they do have one of the best players in the state, but they are not a one-man band whatsoever. This is a very good football team. Like I said, more than capable of winning the state title this year. And then finally, in Class 2A2, you have Salina going on the road to face Adair, another matchup featuring top 5 teams. This is the game that I'm going to be at on Friday night. We'll also have a guy at the Bixby Jinx game, but I'm looking forward to seeing this matchup in Class 2A2 because, Davis and Vian played for the state title last year in Class 2A2. They're number 1 and number 2 respectively in the rankings right now. But it's not a foregone conclusion that they're going to play in the title game again. It could be Salina and Adair. And in fact, when you look at 2A2 and you look at last season, Davis made it to the state championship game actually because they lost to Holdenville in district play. If Davis wins the district championship, if Vian wins the district championship, which they're both favored to do, they'll actually be on the same side of the bracket, meaning they'll meet in the semifinals, and that opens the door for possibly Salina, Adair, whoever wins this game on Friday night, to possibly make it to the state title game. Salina, number 4 in our 2A2 rankings. They're 3-0 on the season. And in my opinion, they got to start getting some more respect across the state. They've been a top 5 team for us since the start of the year. But this is a team that should not be overlooked anymore. They're a team that is very competitive, very talented, and it starts with junior wide receiver Cooper Hooker. He's a player that I've seen since his freshman season. He's so dynamic. He's not the biggest prospect. It doesn't matter. Put the ball in his hands. He's going to make something special happen with it. Ask any of the coaches who have played Salina over the last several years, and they talk about Cooper Hooker in a way that, like, hey, we tried to limit what he could do. It didn't matter. So he's a very underrated player. This is an underrated team, but this is an opportunity on Friday night to start grabbing that attention that they want in Class 2A2 and across the state of Oklahoma. If they can go on the road and beat an Adair team that has been just as dominant so far this season, they're number 3 in our 2A2 rankings. They're 3-0 on the season. They have a player in Cooper McCord that should get a lot more respect. He's been starting for them at quarterback and linebacker for the last several years. And you just look at the numbers that he's been able to put up over the last couple of seasons and in the first few weeks of this season. And he is so dynamic. He's an absolute monster on the football field, making things happen on the offensive side of the ball, leading the team in tackles, or at least he's one of the team's leading tacklers on the defensive side of the ball. I'm really looking forward to seeing this matchup in person. Last year, this was the closest game for Adair. Adair went on to go 10-0 in the regular season. This was the closest game against Salina. They won 22-18. They've dominated this series historically, but I think it's very even going into Friday night's matchup, and I can't wait to get out there for that one. Again, I'll be there, and then we'll also have someone else at the Bixby Jinx game. We'll have plenty of updates on social media. We'll have highlights on our YouTube channel, as well as coverage on Prep Red Zone Oklahoma. All right, so that's a look and a breakdown, more in-depth breakdown on the top 5 games across the state of Oklahoma. Also a look at the 10 best games. Again, you can check out more on Prep Red Zone Oklahoma right now. But we're moving on to our coaches interviews portion of the show. And we start with Owasso head coach Bill Blankenship. Coach, um, I know it was a tough start to the season, 1-2, probably not the way you drew it up, but you also knew that your team was going to be challenged with the non-district schedule that you had in front of you, playing Bixby and Jinx back to back in the first 2 weeks. What were you able to take away, and what were you able to learn about your team following non-district play?
Believe that we are potentially a very good football team. I think we're growing into being the team that we want to be. We had some growing pains and probably still will. We started 9 new players on defense, and we kind of knew that coming into it, that could be a little bit of a challenge, but I've been very happy with the growth of our defensive unit. Um, we can talk more specifically about that as we go. Offensively, we knew we had to rebuild an offensive line. We were had 4 new starters in the O line, and they've performed pretty well. But it's taken us a while to get in the rhythm. I thought we saw some glimpses of that in the Jinx game. We didn't finish very well in the second half, but we had a really good first half, and then put the whole thing together in the third game against Sand Springs and started playing a lot better. Um, Certainly going to have to play at a higher level, starting this week in district play. But I believe that what I've seen in practice and what I've seen in development is our guys are starting to put together that um, the possibilities of having a really good year.
For you, obviously, one of the biggest storylines this offseason was, all the coaching movement. I mean, obviously, player movement's one thing, and it's been a huge talking point in Oklahoma, but the coaching carousel this offseason was crazy in the Tulsa area. One of those things was you returning to the sideline
Yeah.
to be Owasso's head coach for the second time. What's it been like to be back on the sideline? Obviously, you had almost an entire offseason to get back on the sideline, on the field, working with the guys. What's it been like for you now, a month into the season as head coach once again of the Rams?
Well, it is still enjoyable. It's something I having a good time doing on a regular basis. I really um, probably miss being around these young guys more than I realized at the time. Um, so that piece of it has been really good. I love this squad. This is a young team that I think every coach in America would like to be their coach. I mean, these are just great guys. They give you a lot of what they have, and it's fun to be a part of just investing in them. So I'm really excited that I got the chance to do this again. I thought I was done. I didn't see it happening. Didn't look for it to happen. I was trying to scratch that itch enough, hanging out with Josh over at BA and some other coaches around the area that I felt like that was probably going to be enough for me. And then when all you talked about the things that went down, when it all happened, and Coach Duff asked me if I would consider coming back. It was pretty cool that even my wife agreed, so I was okay with that.
I got to tell you, Coach, because I mean, look, it's 9 months in the past at this
Yeah.
point, but you know, Keith Riggs steps down. Well, Adam
Yeah.
Gaylor is the obvious choice to take his position. Coach Fred steps down. If Antonio wants the union job, he's the obvious choice. Broken Arrow bringing back Travis Hill. That was the obvious choice. The biggest curveball was Coach B returning to the sidelines at
Yeah.
Owasso. So
Yeah.
even
I get
still, nine
that.
months later, it's pretty crazy. Um, Talking about your ball club, one player that I definitely want to talk about this week is Jaden Hall, your senior running back.
Mhm.
Last week we added him to our Player of the Year watch list because in my mind he has transformed into one of the best running backs in Oklahoma. The first couple years in his career, he was, a great piece to this Owasso offense where he was splitting carries with two other running backs. He was a
Yeah.
really solid running back, but he wasn't that marquee guy yet. This year, there's no doubt that
Mhm.
he is one of the best running backs in 6A1 and in the state. He's off to a really good start this season.
Jay Hall is a young man that I talked about the joy of getting to coach. He's one of them. I mean, as a senior, I've been coaching him since he was a freshman. Um, and he is so mature, such a leader. So I'm just amazed, Michael. In the world of recruiting has changed, and I understand all that kind of stuff. This guy checks every box.
Yeah.
Speed, size, ability to pass block, receptions, character, all of the things. And he is a leader deluxe on this team. He's one of our captains, and it's just been a lot of fun to get to coach him. And he's having a great start to his senior year.
Yeah, I mean, it started last year. Game-winning touchdown in the semifinals against
Yeah.
Jinx, big game in the championship against Bixby, and he's just carried that over to this season. Like I said, one of the best running backs in Oklahoma. He's off to a great start. Should have a very successful season. Let's talk more about the team. You mentioned, a lot of new faces on the defense. Has there been a player or a position group that has surprised you or has come along over the last month where it's like, coming into the season, you're like, I don't know about this spot right
Yeah.
here, but 1 month into the season, pleasantly surprised? Is there a group or
Yeah,
player?
yeah. No, I'm pleasantly surprised or pleased, I would rather say. Um, just the faces, the people that are elevating. First of all, in the D line, we knew we had Taj. We were felt real good about Taj. I mean, what a great player. But Christian Turner was a guy that was kind of playing behind Taj earlier, and we moved him out to be an edge player. He is so twitchy and so much of a problem for people that's been encouraging. Ben Duggins has been able to really solidify the nose position and play at a high level a lot of times. So the depth in the defensive line room has really improved. All of us knew we were replacing every linebacker. We were a little unsure about how that would all fit. The guys that have risen to the top, Ryder Karn has just been exceptional in his first year. He's just a program guy, a guy that's been with us all the way through, had tremendous offseason, and then given the opportunity, has just gotten better and better and better. He's been incredibly productive the first 3 weeks at his linebacker spot. We're playing Chris Safaris. You had talked about that rotating three-headed monster at running back, and we're going to continue to get Chris playing some at running back, but he has gotten healthy and now is really evolving into a very good linebacker as well. Others, Cam Miller and Will Baker, I mean, and Joey Grable, they're all doing well. Then we knew we had Carter Langendorfer back. We knew he would give us some depth back there, but in Coach Neal's defensive setup, we needed to find some other pieces. And Peyton LeGrand, another program guy, has become one of our key middle safeties. Sam Hoback, that had moved in this spring, is another safety piece. We play a lot of three safety concept. AJ Roberts at one corner. And then we've had a little bit of a rotating deal. We had a sophomore, Jackson Suggs, playing really well at the other corner position. Cole Campbell, who played a lot last year at safety, we moved him out to the corner position. and both of those guys are fighting some injury bugs, but we haven't lost them for long. So I think they'll get back. And I just have been pleased with the way we run to the football and we're tackling much better.
Yeah, you mentioned that, and in that Bixby game, I was really impressed with Hoback. You mentioned him; he was all over the place. And look, obviously things didn't work out on the scoreboard, but I thought he had a really good game. I think that some of the local D2 college programs are starting to take notice of him and
Yep.
his abilities in the secondary. Let's finish this up by talking about this week, Broken Arrow. Obviously the storylines write themselves with who's over there, who's on your sideline. But to me, I don't necessarily care as much about that. I care about the fact that this is a district opener that
Yeah.
could very well decide the district championship. Obviously, there's a lot of football to be played the rest of the year. Edmond Memorial will have something to say about that. Some other really good teams in that district. But on paper, Broken Arrow and Owasso look like the two most talented teams in this district. It should be a very good football team. And no matter who's coaching there, who's coaching at
Yeah.
Owasso, who's playing for them, who's playing for you, this is a very important football game to decide who could potentially, have an easier path once the playoffs roll around.
There's no doubt about that, Michael. Travis, Coach Hill has done a great job of coming in and building new energy and blowing, putting new life into a bunch of those guys. They've had a whole bunch of kids that have moved in as well, some from here, some from Union, some from other places, from Jinx. And so he's got a collection of guys that have probably given them added confidence, a new energy, and they're playing pretty dang good right now. The film about showed their win over Harbor, but also had an opportunity and probably could have easily won at Fayetteville, which is a really good program, and then got after Mustang in the last game. So I think they're playing with a lot of confidence, and they're definitely the team for us to focus in on. There's no question about that. I think if you're anybody that knows Oklahoma football, you understand the ramifications of district play. And so to get off on the right foot, I wish we had an easier team, but we're going to have to go over to Broken Arrow and play at their place and get after it.
That's kind of the message for this week's preview show. Like it is week 4, it's only week 4, but at the end of the day, some of these district openers are going to have massive ramifications
Right.
on district championships, playoff seeding, and all those things that I know you as a coach and coaches across the state, we don't want to think about playoffs right now. We want to think,
Right.
one day at a time. I want to think about practice this afternoon, but the truth is a lot of these games are going to have huge ramifications on what we see down the line. Coach, thanks so much for your time and good luck against Broken Arrow. Looking forward to seeing what happens there and what will be a very important game in that district
Awesome.
race.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate it. Always good.
That's Owasso head coach Bill Blankenship joining us. Now going to Del City with Robert Jones, the head coach of the Del City Eagles. And coach, you're off to a 2-1 start, and this season looks a lot like last season, where you struggle in the opening game against Edmond Memorial, but you guys have been on fire in the last 2.
Yeah, starting off with Everett Memorial, man, Coach Meredith, he's doing a great job over there. They're a change program. I think when people think of Everett Memorial, they kind of think of Everett Memorial in years past, but that's a tough team. I think they're one of the competitors in 6A1 top 3 team. I think they're going to surprise a lot of people as they continue to progress forward. I'm always a big believer. My mentor is Coach Rose. I really believe in scheduling tough early because it prepares you not only for the rest of your non-district games. I think it prepares you for the season as well as you get into district. So it was similar to last year. We had a young quarterback. Our starter cornerback, Sincere Overton, was out that game. He's been out the last 3 games. We're hoping to get him back this week. To throw a brand new quarterback in there who has never played a varsity game into that type of atmosphere against that type of defense, it kind of showed his inexperience and kind of showed that he wasn't ready for that type of environment. But we still had a lot of positives coming from that. I think the physicality that we got from that game, just playing against a 6A1 team, it really transferred to playing these 5A teams with Booker T and Midwest City, and it showed up. Booker T is going to be a great team. I think they're going to be a team that competes for a state title. I don't think the score was an indication of what kind of team they are. They are very physical. They can play man coverage on you, and they really have a great defensive line, and they're very athletic offensively too, and they have a great quarterback. So I think Booker T is going to make some noise for the rest of the season, and I think that they'll be a contender once we get into the playoffs. And then even with Midwest City, Coach Washington's doing a great job. They came out and played us very tough in the first quarter. I think we kind of have a mental thing over them right now that, we won 5 in a row. So I think we kind of, once we got a turnover, we kind of got in the head, and you kind of seen them kind of just get into that mode, kind of similar to where we are with Carl Albert. Sometimes teams just have a mindset over you that you have to break. So, but that's a great football team too. They're very athletic. They're a splitting image of who we are. So I think that they're going to be a team that's going to be reckoned with once they get into district and then playoffs as well.
Let's talk about Rickland Holmes, because you can't talk about Del City football this year or last year for that matter without talking about Rickland. I mentioned it, really around this time last year. I saw you guys in person in week 4, and I talked about Rickland and how he has really taken that big step forward as a leader on the offense and defensive side of the ball. Obviously, a very good defensive player, but I think he's pretty underrated as a running back as well. Very physical runner. Obviously, a linebacker playing running back with his running style. As his coach, you see him every single day. Just talk about his growth as a player and as a leader over the last 18 months, because it's been very fun to watch.
Well, it's crazy. You say 18 months, man. It's been 30 months because, he started as a soft freshman for us. So he's kind of one of those players that you seem like he's almost like a coach because he's been here so long, similar to when we had Kenigel Thomas. Kenigel Thomas was a 4-year starter. So when you get a kid of his talent that's been here for so long, it's like he's part of the coaching staff. He's a great kid in the classroom. He's a great kid in the building. He's everything you want from a captain and a teammate. And I knew this year he was going. I know people got to see glimpses of him at running back last year, so I didn't really think he got to show it because we're always rotating running backs. Years past we had Rodney Fields. Last year we had Caleb Blackwood mixed in with Jeremiah Miles as well. So he really never got the bulk of the carries because he was playing defense. But this year, he has over, I believe, like close to 400 yards already. And he's just a bruiser, and he's 230 pounds, and he's a sprinter. He's a track runner. So when you have a 230-pound back, it's pretty tough for those high school DBs that want to come up and tackle him. And he reminds me a lot. Their running styles are different, but just the physical style, Xavier Robinson. And I knew coming into his senior year, I always see this with those type of athletes that have played freshman, sophomore, and junior year. Once they finally get to their senior year and they're playing against everybody that's their same age or younger, you kind of see a leap in their play. And this year at running back, the last game against Midwest City, I've been here for 9 years, and that was arguably the best game I've seen a running back play since I've been here at Del City. And that's saying a lot because we don't have some great backs. So he's doing great things at running back. And I think with him mixed in with Caleb Blackwood, we got 2 seasoned running backs that, when that weather gets cold and we continue to progress in the season, I really think they're going to have an impact. Then you mix in our young quarterbacks to 0-10 and what he could do in the running game with Rickland. But then you add what Rickland does defensively. He's just a consistent defensive player. He's always going to give you some pass rush off the edge. He's going to be able to track down some runners with his speed from sideline to sideline. He's just your true, typical D1 blue-collar player. And I think as we progress in the season, I think he's going to be that guy that really pushes for player of the year just because he's making so many plays. And when you go watch him play, you kind of look at his body type. You're like, wow, he's a good-looking kid. And then he backs it up with his play.
I mean, he was a finalist for us last year for Player of the Year. Really impressed with his, continued growth as a player, leader, as I mentioned. And you mentioned Caleb, and that was the guy who I wanted to talk about next because while Rickland, he's that, prototypical two-way player, a star on offense and defense. I don't know if there's anything that Caleb can't do. He seems like the ultimate Swiss Army knife, whether it's offense, defense. Throw him in as a return guy in special teams. I've seen him make a lot of plays from a lot of different positions on the football field. Having that guy as just a junior, he came to you guys last year as a sophomore. He has 2 more years of high school football. It's got to be fun as a coaching staff knowing you can put him probably anywhere on the football field and he's going to make plays.
Absolutely. Just this year alone, he's already played slot receiver, quarterback, running back, safety, punt returner, deep snapper. kickoff returner. He plays multiple positions, and he's just one of those type of athletes that excels at them all. Versus Booker T, he had 5 touchdowns. He had 3 as a running back. No, he had 2 as a running back, 1 as a quarterback, and then he had 2 punt returns. And then you kind of team him up with those other guys like Josiah Chester and Rickland Holmes. It just elevates his playing even more because he's so fast and he's elusive. And he's just getting more physical on the defensive end too. I really have seen him kind of excel in the last year. I think last year he was kind of getting comfortable, coming from El Reno, getting comfortable in our system, getting comfortable what we do defensively and offensively. But this year he's really taking this play to the next level. You can obviously tell that he's put on 15 pounds of muscle. And he's running the ball very well too, and he really gives us a 1-2 threat with Rickland. But then you can also put him at receiver, and he does things well as well. And then you can put him as a wildcat quarterback, and he could do some great things there. So I'm excited to see him to continue to grow. I think he's going to be a guy that's in the likes of Kanigel and LaDainian Fields and Rodney Fields, where he's just going to be that player of the year type player. Just because he's so athletic and he still has room to grow, and then you surround him around the other players that we have that are very athletic and have speed as well.
It wouldn't surprise me if you would have listed off all those positions, and then you also followed it up with he also plays in the band at halftime. He sells popcorn
Yes,
before
sir.
the game. Like he does whatever is
Oh
needed.
man.
Coach, let's talk about your team this year, and is there anything different about this group? Because obviously Del City's been knocking on the door. You mentioned Carl Albert earlier, and obviously you
Yeah.
guys played them in the state title game a couple years ago. You played them in the semifinals last year. They're that last hurdle for Del City to become that true state championship contender. Probably going to see them again, if we're just speaking honestly, in the playoffs at some point this season. But what's different about this team this year that has what it takes to get over that Carl Albert hurdle and become the new marquee team in Class 5A, a class that's been dominated by the Titans over the last few years?
Well, I think we talked about this yesterday as a coaching staff, which I didn't see this coming. This is why every year is so special because you never know what you're going to get with a team. I can arguably say this is probably our most physical team, and it's surprising because we had 8 new starters on defense. We lost a lot last year, but we're kind of getting to the point in our program where we just kind of reload. When we get some new kids from Oklahoma City schools, just different locations because we're kind of in the middle of the metroplex right there by Oklahoma City. This team just plays with a relentless effort, and they're real physical up front. This is by far the more physical team that we had in the trenches, and that's saying a lot with what we had in the past. And then we have 2 stellar running backs that are 200 pounds plus with Rickland and Caleb. Then you add that dynamic with the quarterback. We did have River Warren, we had Cash Coordinator last year. They were more pocket style passers. I think what Sincere Overton gives us at the quarterback position makes us real unique because what he could do with his feet, and then he's also he could be a pocket passer, but he could be that threat, how he can run the ball as well. So now you have a 3-headed monster with Rickland, Caleb, and Sincere. So I really think that's going to give us some advantages there as well. And then on the outside, we have a couple receivers that Josiah Chester. I know people know about him. He's kind of really coming into his own. He started as a sophomore last year, but he's really developing this year as a junior, and you can see the physicality, you can see his speed kind of going to that next level of his game. And then Walter Franklin's a guy that he's 6'3", he's very fast as well. He's similar to the build of Josiah. So we have all the intangibles with the athleticism at running back, quarterback, and receiver, and then we have what we need in the trenches at the O-line and defensive line. So I think we're ready to take that next step just because of the physicality and the effort that we're playing. Carl Albert's obviously a physical team, and any team that you play in the latter part of the season, you're going to have to be physical in the trenches. And I feel like that's what we kind of lacked once we got to the state championship in the semifinals. You arguably saw a difference in Carl Albert's offensive line and defensive line. So that's something that we really focused and concentrated on in the offseason, and we're starting to see the benefits of that and getting rewarded for it this year.
Well, before you can worry about Carl Albert, before you can worry about playoffs, you got to take care of business in district play, and it's a big district opener on Friday night as you guys host Collinsville. I was in the house for that game last year. It was not close. You guys dominated the Cardinals. They were without their star running back. He was banged up a little bit. He's expected to play on Friday night. He's having a really good season so far this year. They got a young quarterback that's coming along. He's just a sophomore, but I saw him in person a couple weeks ago, and you can see that there's a bright future there as long as he continues down the path he's on. When you look at the Cardinals on film this season, it's a big district opener. What do you see from Collinsville this year?
Man, I saw what I saw last year, and similar to what I said about the Booker T score, I don't think last year's score was an indication of who they were. I think, like you said, they were missing two starters. That's huge. Whenever you take your starting quarterback away and your starting running back away, I don't care how good you are, you're going to see a different style of team. And I know their quarterback moved on to Tulsa Union, I believe, and I was thinking that they were going to have a little layoff there, but shoot, man, they got a quarterback that looks pretty seasoned. He has great size. And their running back's one of the better running backs in the state. And they have a physical offensive line. They have a great coaching staff. They won a state championship in 2022, I believe. So they have a great program. We know we're in for a dogfight. We know that we kind of got up on them last year, and we had a couple things go our way in that game. So we know that they're fired up to kind of get back and get at us. So we're really looking forward to it. We feel like our non-district games have really prepared us for this type of matchup. Those are three stellar programs with Edmond Memorial, Booker T, and Midwest City that really has gotten us prepared and kind of exposed some things that we need to get fixed. But we're respecting Collinsville all the way. We know this is going to be a big time physical game. We're excited about it, because we need to figure out where we are early so we can make some corrections if need be. But we know what they're going to bring to the table. They have a physical defense. They have some great kids in the back end at defensive back. They have some great linebackers, and they have a great defensive line. So we know this is going to be a great physical game. We know we need to prepare all week and be ready for this, and we don't need to take them lightly. We can't look at last year's score. That doesn't mean anything. We're going to have to go out there and earn this win versus a great football team, which they are.
Yeah, there's no doubt. It's always fun. Well, it's fun on my end. Might not be, for the coaches involved to have this, caliber game as your district opener. There's no easing into district play as the slates are wiped clean. Everybody's, 0-0 at this point. These games start counting towards playoff seeding, but should be a very fun game. And like you mentioned, physicality will be the name of the game on Friday night
That's
as you
right.
host the Collinsville Cardinals. Coach, thanks so much for joining us this week. And good luck Friday, and looking forward to catching up soon.
All right. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Dell City head coach Robert Jones joining us here on the preview show, and now transitioning to our next head coach, Perkins-Tryon head coach Dawayne Hudson. They got another huge district opener this week as they hit the road to take on the Sulphur Bulldogs. And coach, let's start by going back to last week. You guys coming off a tough rivalry, loss to Cushing. How important was it to get back on the field? Early, it was a short week transitioning from week 2 to week 3. Just take me back to last week and how you guys were able to bounce back following the tough loss to Cushing on the road.
Yeah, it was a get right, get back on track game. I was asked after the Cushing game, is it bad to have to play on Thursday night against Daniel Webster? I said, no, like you said, get that taste out of our mouth. It's a big deal. So we're able to get through with that. Non-district schedules out of the way, coming out 2-1. But doesn't matter if you're 3-0 or 0-3 or 2-1. Now the real season starts with district play.
Before we get into district, because obviously you have, arguably the biggest district opener across the state, at least, in some of the classes, especially in 3A. I need to talk to you about your running back, Wyatt Atkinson, because, he's had a really good career so far. Last week was one of my first chances to really see him, for a full in a game setting in person. And it's very clear that he's a big part of what you guys do. Had 3 rushing touchdowns, had a pick 6, even returned a kick for a touchdown. Wyatt Atkinson had a big night that night. And like I said, it's clear that he's very important to what you guys do in all 3 phases of the game.
No, you hit it on the head. He's been a workhorse for us for the last 3 years. He's ran the ball, played safety, played outside backer, returned kicks, punts. Does a little bit of everything for us. He's a dude that has a strong desire to play after high school, wants to play college ball somewhere. And if you ask him, he doesn't have oh, I got to go play at OSU or OU or something like that. He knows that's probably not in the cards for him, but I do know that he'll be a good program kid. He has been for us. Great family, too. He's got a younger brother, Weston, who's a sophomore, and they have some pretty good heated arguments or moments in practice and in games. It's pretty competitive. But Wyatt, he's not a real vocal kid, but he leads by example. He's always winning all the races in practice, competing to get better, and does a great job in the weight room developing his body to get better. So we're definitely blessed to have him and as a leader and a captain of our team.
Yeah, in my opinion, he's the and look, I'm not telling you anything you don't already know, but after watching him in person, I'm completely on the same page. He's going to be able to make a program, whatever that ends up being, at the next level. He's going to be able to help them out in any capacity, make them better. Talk to me about the rest of your team because you come into this season, Perkins-Tryon has been able to knock on the door in Class 3A, but we know the story. It's a class that's been dominated by the likes of Lincoln Christian, Heritage Hall, Holland Hall a few years ago, and they're undefeated to start the year again. So it's a class that has been dominated by the private schools, but Perkins-Tryon has been able to carve that niche and be one of those consistent programs. Talk to me about your team this year, and how is it different? How is it different than some of those teams in the past that this team has a chance to take that next step and really truly contend for a state title?
Well, if I can, Michael, I'll start my first year in 21. When I got here, we ran into a buzzsaw Holland Hall in 21, and they're really good. I think that they won the state that year. They had 22 seniors, which is crazy at our level. Um, but that year, I learned something about our kids. They expected to go to the playoffs, but at that time, they didn't really believe that they'd get past private school like Holland Hall. Um, you kind of fast forward over the years, we're not gonna, it's not a secret that, we have high goals, and one of those goals, win district championship. Another goal is to make it to the semifinal or be a top four team and be in the state championship. And, we were able to reach a few of those goals in 23 by, in my opinion, our kids believing. And then, last year fell shorter than we really wanted to a good Pauls Valley that came into town round one. But to me, being a part of some good programs, good staffs, the important part is understand that okay, we've got a 14 game season. It's going to be a long season. You're going to practice on Thanksgiving, which is fun, but not so fun if you're not planning for that. Moms and dads, we need to know that. Like, there's, to me, that's part of it. It's a mentality, and the expectations of it. Our kids going into year five understand that. I think that our kids know that it's going to be a challenge. Going into this year, I think this year's team, we have a lot of kids returning, and a few guys having to move to some different spots to fill different voids, and it's a different team DNA or makeup. But I'm excited about our opportunity to get the district, like you said, having to play so for rattle out of the box. Probably not the most ideal thing, right? But at the end of the day, we're definitely going to know where we're at.
Let's talk about the Bulldogs. Obviously, they're off to a really strong start. I was there in week one when they beat Washington at home, snapping Washington's lengthy winning streak. That place is not an easy place to win a football game, and I can tell you from watching it in person in week one, they took care of business the following week against Davis. This was a team that played for the state title a year ago. When you look at the Bulldogs on film, what stands out to you so far this season?
Well, in the off season, you hear different, I don't know, people rumbling, so far's going to be good, but they'll be a lot different than they were last year. I can imagine going in their off season, they're a foot away from winning a state championship, literally,
Yeah.
or inches away, however you want to, 12 inches away. So but man, don't buy into that rat poison, man. They're extremely well coached. Kids fly the football on defense, and nobody's scoring any points against them. To offensively with the weapons, you got the Cole kid, 17, and then you got the Mobley kid, and then number 1, number 10, and then they get the quarterback out of Washington, the backup who man's done a hell of a job for them up to this point. They played in some big games with both Davis and Washington, as you referenced, you being there, and so they're definitely battle tested. And then there's not any glaring weaknesses. I feel like, whether it's all three phases of the game, special teams, offense, defense, they're going to be a hard-nosed, physical brand of football, and that's something that we pride ourselves on. So, in my opinion, we're both going to come in saying we're going to run the football, we're going to be physical in all three phases, and it's going to be a lot of body blows, and it's going to, in my opinion, I hope we can last 10, 12 rounds. And so, like you said, me personally, I've never been to Sulphur. I'm excited about the opportunity to get to, experience that. I've heard about it. I've heard that we're probably at least 7 or 10 points down already with, some of the homers that we'll get down there and all that, and which is, I don't know, as a coach and a competitor, like, okay, all right, I've told the kids we're already down by 7. The scoreboard's already 7-0 so for Bulldogs. So what are we doing to make up for those 7 points? I For my team, for our team, I feel like it's vital that we take the business-minded approach of, every day we've got to get better. Um, and one of the things that started talking on Friday with the Thursday game is, um, even myself was guilty this morning. I hit, I'll hit the snooze, right, to sleep in that extra 7 minutes before the next alarm. Well, this week we're not hitting the snooze. There's no snooze. There's no snooze on didn't watch film. There's no snooze on not going, doing your best at practice or giving your best at every rep or maximizing every opportunity this week to get better. And you know, whether it was when I was a young boy, teenager, every teenager can be complacent in every different areas of their life or not be consistent. And I use the reference. I said, when mom tells you to go clean your room and get all the dishes out of the dishwasher, do you do it the first time? And not one of them raised their hand, which is pretty normal of a typical teenage boy.
Yeah.
And so, anyways, I said, well, this week we're not hitting the snooze and asking mom telling us twice. Like, we got to understand that it's go time. It's important to me. Being in the driver's seat, being 1-0. Whoever comes out of this 1-0 is definitely in the driver's seat of our district. It's not guaranteed to stay in the driver's seat, but that's where we want to be.
That perfect segue to my final question, because how do you find that balance between, guys, it's only week 4. We're still in September. There's a lot of football left to be played. It's only the district opener, but it's the district opener. Like you said, the winner of this game is going to be in the driver's seat. Everything before the season pointed to, like, look, you win this game, as long as you take care of business, you should be, the district champion, which is obviously the first goal of the season. How do you find that balance between, it's only the district opener, it's only week 4, but this might be the most important game of the season?
No, I think, to be real honest, Michael, I think that's a really good question. I've got to go back to, I've been coaching for 20 years and been a part of different staffs, different teams. And one way that I don't want to do it was back in 2015, playing, the Moore War, the Moore versus Westmore. And you know how big a game that is each and every year. Um, I felt like we put in, being a coach at Moore, we put all eggs in one basket. It was, if we can't lose this game. We've lost the last however many years, and again, it was my first time there, but it was held up to almost an unreachable height to that we're going to have to play at, and we're going to have to be perfect. And at the end of the day, we didn't. We came up short. Played hard. Kids, played really hard. but I felt like there was a lot of bodies on the ground afterwards. It was a true, now what do we do? And so there's a fine line of I do feel like we have some kids that are mature enough and been around the program and experienced and played in enough games and these types of big games that understand it. But we've got quite a few other kids that haven't. And so, for us, we're talking about it. Like we're going to talk about it. Like we're not trying to make this game an unreachable height, like it's do or die. But at the end of the day, you need to understand why it's so important. To me, the number one thing. If you look back 2 years ago in 23, we did win the district championship, and we've got some kids that were a part of that. Um, and you reference the private schools in the 3A, which have had a pretty good handle on the state championship. It goes through them. Well, in 23, we still played Lincoln Christian in the semifinals. This cycle, the district champion, Sulphur last year, didn't have to see Lincoln Christian or Heritage Hall until the state championship. So, to me, the reality is if you're a district champ, you have a lot better road to the state championship and in aligning with your goals to being in the top four. So to me, that's just reality. But it doesn't mean that it's that or nothing, that or bust. It's not going to make or break our entire season, but it is something that 1-0 is going to look a lot different at this point in the year.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it, and that's the intriguing part of district play opening up across the state. And it's only one piece in the puzzle, but man, for a lot of teams on Friday night, those district openers they could end up deciding the district championship down the line when we're talking playoffs in November, and then ultimately the road to a potential state championship game in December. Always interested to find the dynamic in that balance between guys. It's only week 4, and guys, this is the most important game of the season. Coach, thanks so much for your time this morning. Good luck on Friday night. Look, it's a beautiful atmosphere for high school football, but there might be some home cooking. You never know. But no doubt, no matter what happens, it's going to be a fun game on Friday night. Congrats on the hot start, and looking forward to seeing what happens Friday.
Hey, thanks for having me, and forks up.
That's Perkins-Tryon head coach Dawayne Hudson, and transitioning now to our players to watch. And Coach Hudson actually mentioned one of these guys for the Sulphur Bulldogs that could be having a significant impact. He said, number one, that's Bridge Barrett, wide receiver and defensive back for the Sulphur Bulldogs. And, when you talk about a player that can impact both sides of the ball, Barrett's been able to do that over the last year or so, and he's off to a hot start. And he kicks off this week's players to watch. Bridge Barrett is having a fantastic start to this season, and he's really carrying it over from the way he played last year, specifically on the defensive side of the ball. Barrett was one of the state's best ball hawks. He was one of the leaders in interceptions, and he's still a standout on the defensive side of the ball this season, but he's also emerging as one of the top receiver threats in the Sulphur offense. Look, this is not a Sulphur offense that's going to want to throw the ball all over the yard, throwing the ball 30, 40 times a game. But when they do, Barrett has shown that he can be a reliable pass catcher. But for me, he's definitely at his best on the defensive side of the ball. We saw it firsthand earlier this season against Washington. He had a huge game there, and he's only continued to pick up momentum. He's, in my opinion, one of the best two-way players in the state, one of the best cornerbacks in the state, but don't overlook the impact that he can have on the offensive side of the ball. Another two-way player to watch that's probably better, well, not probably, significantly better on the defensive side of the ball is Emma Memorial linebacker Colton McComb. He's emerged as one of the top prospects in the state's 2027 class. McComb, one of the state's best linebackers, was one of 6A1's leaders in tackling last season. And he's also not too bad on the offensive side of the ball. He's a threat in the run game on offense. He can also line up a little bit at tight end. Just whatever Emma Memorial needs from him, he's able to do. And he leads this Emma Memorial defense that is one of the more, in my opinion, criminally underrated defensive units in the state, regardless of class. This defense is very good. And they're going to get more people's attention as we now move on into district play. But Colton McComb having a fantastic start to his junior season. And like I said, he's emerged as one of the top prospects in Oklahoma's 2027 class. Another player that might be criminally underrated, Owasso wide receiver Julius Wilson. He's a player that really started standing out to me during his time at Holland Hall a few years ago. And now, look, he started his high school career as a really talented basketball prospect. It looks like he's more of a football prospect now. And in my opinion, that's the right move. You look at him in person, and he's a big receiver that is incredibly reliable. He's made play after play for the Rams so far this season on the offensive side of the ball. He's part of that three-headed monster that I mentioned earlier at the wide receiver position for Owasso. Even in that game against Bixby, I know things didn't go well on the scoreboard, but Wilson was one of the best players on the field that night, and he was able to do it consistently, making big catch after big catch. He's definitely a player to watch this week as the Rams take on Broken Arrow. Staying in 6A1, this guy, he's arguably the best player in the state, so it makes sense that he would be on this list. And he's also, one of the players to watch every single week. It's Jinx running back and Oklahoma State commit KD Jones. Jones and the Trojans look to knock off the Bixby Spartans, and Jones, he's off. He's off to a very good start this season, and that should surprise absolutely nobody. He's a running back that is more than capable of carrying the ball 30 plus times a game if that's what's necessary. He's also a threat out of the backfield as a receiving option in the Jinx offense. And we should also throw out the fact that he can help the Trojans out in the return game as well. And, it was mentioned this offseason how Jinx would possibly use him more in the secondary. Needless to say, Jones is so important to what the Trojans do in all phases of the game. Looking forward to seeing how him and the Trojans try to slow down this fiery Bixby team. They're off to a hot start, but you know what? So is Jones, and so are the Trojans. I can't wait to see what happens in this game. Staying at the running back position, but moving down to 6A2, you have Choctaw hosting Piedmont, and senior running back Mayor Morgan is a player to watch for us as he is off to a good start this season. And I mentioned it last week during our interview with Choctaw head coach Jake Corbin. In my opinion, I think that Mayor Morgan might be the pound for pound toughest player in the state of Oklahoma, because it's easy to see him in person and be like, he's a small running back. But really, when you watch him, he's not small. He's just short, and he bounces off of defenders. I mean, look at how many times he's in the open field in a one-on-one situation. And if you get his hand, if you're lucky enough to get your hands on him, he's just bouncing off of you. He's so strong in the lower body. He's so strong just overall that it makes him very tough to bring down in a one-on-one setting. If Morgan is able to blow through the line of scrimmage and get past the defensive front, he's a problem to contain. And for Choctaw, they're looking to bounce back from back-to-back losses. It's their first home game. They're going to be very pumped to play in front of the home fans, not have to get on a bus for the fourth consecutive game. So Morgan and the rest of this Choctaw offense is going to look to make a statement as they host Piedmont on Friday night. Back to that Bixby Jinx matchup for the Bixby Spartans. Nathan Hobbs, their linebacker, is going to be a player to watch for us this week. And it kind of goes hand in hand with, for Jinx, their strength is the offensive line. Their strength is the running game with Katie Jones. For Bixby, their strength on defense is that front seven. And the last time we saw Bixby in person, it was that season opener against the Owasso Rams. And Nathan Hobbs was one of the best players on the field that night. He was all over the field, making play after play. In my opinion, he might have been the best player overall on the field that night, and that's saying something considering how much talent there was. But for Bixby, they got to find a way to slow down the Jinx offensive attack, and I think it starts with the Bixby front seven, and it starts with a player like Nathan Hobbs. In that Broken Arrow Owasso game, Broken Arrow running back Octavian Robertson is a player to watch. He has to be playing with a lot of confidence right now, considering the way he started this season. Go back to their last game against Mustang. and he turned into an absolute workhorse for the Broken Arrow offense as he was able to make play after play. He carried the ball. I don't remember how many carries he finished with. I think it was either at 30 or over 30 carries in the game. He is becoming a very reliable option for this offense. And look, he's had a solid start to his career. He's a junior. He played as a freshman. He played last year as a sophomore, and I really like his game. I think that he has a lot of potential moving forward. He's starting to figure that potential out and make himself one of the top running backs in the state. And as you see with Broken Arrow taking on Owasso somewhat young. Coach Blankenship mentioned it earlier. They were very young on the defensive side of the ball. Maybe that opens the door to Robertson taking advantage and having a big night on Friday night. One game that we also mentioned earlier, Del City and Collinsville. For Del City, Rickland Holmes II is a player to watch. He was a finalist for a Player of the Year award last year. We talked a lot about him with Robert Jones, the Del City head coach, earlier in the program. And Rickland, for me, was just so impressed with what he was able to do last year because, Coach mentioned he had started since his freshman year. He played, as a freshman, as a sophomore on that team that made it to the 5A title game. But he also had a lot of star power around him. LaDainian Fields, Rodney Fields, plenty of guys that are playing at the next level. And so, Holmes wasn't asked to be that leader of the Eagles on offense or defense, but you started to see him turn the page and become a leader last season. He had a big junior year. He's off to a really good start this season as well. And when you look back at that Del City Collinsville game a year ago, he was absolutely dominant. So I'm looking forward to seeing what happens on Friday night. And speaking of Collinsville, our next player is Collinsville senior running back Scott Rigby. And we talked about it, how he was not in the game against Del City last year. He was nursing a shoulder injury, and he's 100% this year. He's off to a really strong start. He's dominated in all three games that Collinsville has played so far. And that's what we saw from him last season. Every time he was healthy and out on the football field, he would, make it look easy running for 150 yards and 2 or 3 touchdowns. In the one game that I saw from Collinsville earlier this season against Edison, he took the opening kick back for a touchdown. He was once again strong on the offensive side of the ball as a running back, also as a receiving threat out of the backfield. If Collinsville is going to pull off the upset and beat Del City on Friday night, Scott Rigby has to have a big game. Speaking of a guy who has to have a big game, Perkins-Tryon trying to upset Sulphur on the road. Wyatt Atkinson, their senior running back, he has to have a big game if Perkins-Tryon is going to be able to pull off the upset. And look, he has the potential to do it. He has the potential to knock off the Bulldogs, and it's going to be a fun matchup to see Wyatt Atkinson and Maddox Mobley go head-to-head in some cases, offensively, defensively, 2 very good football players at the 3A level, 2 players that should probably get a lot more recognition than they already do across the state. But you mentioned Perkins-Tryon trying to pull off the win, trying to take the lead in the district standings. If you're going to do that, Wyatt Atkinson has to have a big game. He's playing with a lot of confidence right now. He's playing with a lot of momentum. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens there as they travel down south to take on the Sulphur Bulldogs. All right, so that's a look at the Week 4 players to watch. Again, you can check out more of a breakdown on the players to watch on Prep Redzone Oklahoma. We put out that article every single Wednesday. Now, switching gears and time to take your questions. Again, you can get your questions in on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, at Prep Redzone. Okay. You can also email me at michael@prepredzone.com to get your questions answered here on the show. Only one question this week. It's a simple one. What was the biggest surprise of non-district play? And I have 2 answers. I have a good answer and I have a bad answer. Good surprise, bad surprise. The good surprise was Fairview not taking a step back. I thought they would, and I've talked about it on the show. I know I've written about it on the website. I thought Fairview would take a step back, considering they lost such a very special senior class. Jax Bernard at quarterback, who threw for over 10,000 yards, 4-year starter, 2-time state champ. You don't lose a player like that and get better. So I thought that they would take a little step a little step back to start the year, but they're 2-1 on the season. They look like a team that could challenge that district. That district is going to be really fun to watch with Cashin and Hooker, and now Fairview. That's going to be right back in the mix. That's definitely a surprise on the good side. Now, on the bad side, Millwood starting 0-2 is a little concerning when you look at the big picture, because Millwood, look, losing to Heritage Hall, they haven't had a whole lot of success in that series anyway. I don't care as much about that. But losing to Douglas was a big surprise. And then the fact that, Millwood, they lost a lot to graduation as well. They lost a lot to graduation. They lost their what would have been a 4-year starter at quarterback. He transferred schools. He's no longer there. So Millwood starting 0-2, that's the bad surprise, because things are going to get harder. They're in arguably one of the toughest districts in the state. You have to worry about Mount St. Mary is improved. Jones looks like a legitimate state championship contender. There's several other teams in that district, OCS, that's also in the top 10. There's several teams in that district that are going to make things very difficult for Millwood. So things aren't going to get easier for a Millwood team that's made it to 3 consecutive state championship games. I'm interested to see what happens with them as they try to turn things around going into district play. All right, wrapping things up, let's take a look at what to expect on Prep Red Zone Oklahoma. Again, on Thursday, we'll have our Player of the Year watch list for week number 4. We're adding 3 more players to that Player of the Year watch list. On Friday, we'll have our First Look Friday breakdown. We'll also have coverage from 4 different games this week. I myself will be at Lincoln Christian at Stigler on Thursday. We'll also have coverage from Pryor at Will Rogers. We'll also have coverage on Friday night from Salina at Adair and Bixby at Jinx. And then we go into the weekend with our weekly coverage. We'll have our week 4 roundup post on Saturday. We'll have our week 4 top performers on Sunday, and then we'll kick off next week with our week 5 rankings on Monday. So looking forward to another great week of football. Again, district play opening up. It starts counting for real. And we should also mention on Prep Red Zone here in the next couple of days, we're launching the dates for our Stock Up Showcase Tour, our winter camp tour that will start taking place across the country in December. Historically, our Oklahoma camps run in January. So we'll have more information on Prep Red Zone Oklahoma about that. So be on the lookout for our Stock Up Showcase Tour dates for you to get out and showcase your abilities in front of the riders, in front of college coaches, get an opportunity to get seen and some much needed exposure early on in the off season. But before we worry about that, before we worry about the off season, we got week 4 coming up. Enjoy the football, everybody, and we'll see you right back here next Wednesday on the Prep Red Zone Oklahoma Preview Show.